Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, Mountaineer Nation. And I think we can all just take a moment and breathe a collective sigh of relief. Whew. The transfer portal is now closed. Capping off a whirlwind of the last 2 weeks for people like myself, YouTube content creators, but also everybody from the head coach to the assistant coaches to the recruiting coordinators to the visit coordinators. Everybody who is a part of the West Virginia football program went into this collective effort. So I would give a round of applause for those folks, everybody who has been working their tails off for the last 2 weeks. I feel as if this is now kind of a culmination of a epic 13-month journey for this football program to get to a sense where it feels like it is now at the ground and working its way back up, getting through the year that was 2025, piecemealing it as best as humanly possible together. Now, West Virginia adding 29 transfer portal additions to go along with the largest high school and JUCO recruiting class in the over 130 years worth of West Virginia football. West Virginia can now look at 2026 as the year. I would consider this really, truly year one for Coach Rodriguez and putting his money and the boosters and all of the fans who went into this collective effort to fund this recruiting class, both transfer and high school class. Everyone putting their money where their mouth was, coming away with the 21st best freshman and JUCO recruiting class in the nation to go along with the 15th best transfer portal recruiting class in the nation. And I need you, like the Idris Elba gif out there, to get the word out there that we back up. So let's, for this video, talk about some of the news that happened today, because today, January 16th, Friday, if you're watching this video on Saturday when it releases, so yesterday, some news happened here on Friday, and I think also want to kind of give a bit of a big picture overview. I knew, and I said this, I think on one of my last videos, that I felt as if that it would get some people in trouble out there on YouTube, and that's why I wanted to be very patient to get to this point where the portal closed today. And now here's the thing: West Virginia can continue to add. They can continue to add as long as they get to a roster standpoint of 105 by the start of the regular season. And I know that can kind of be a bit of a flexible number because there's some stipulations that players who were being grandfathered in as part of the House settlement. So there's a little bit of flexibility with that 105 number, but West Virginia will monitor it, I'm sure. But for all of those who, said some things on social media or one of their YouTube videos, and they were just, worried here, this and that, and I was just, calm down. There are a lot of trepidation out there while the sausage was being made. And analyzing, I feel you can't analyze this until we had the full scope, the whole picture. And I think this, the administration had their hands on the wheel. They knew what they were doing. They were being patient, letting the market kind of settle itself, because it was very quiet, it felt like, through the middle portion, really, late Monday, all the way up until Friday afternoon today. So it went very quiet. West Virginia was, sniffing around some different recruits, did have some different visitors from different levels of division, all three divisions on campus at West Virginia. So I think, let's talk about the news. Let's talk about big picture and where West Virginia goes from here. So the news of the day is that West Virginia recruited, well, let me back up a little bit. So my last video, I had not talked, I didn't do a video Monday because of just one commit. West Virginia brought in a second tight end. We talked about Josh Sapp, who West Virginia brought in from Clemson on Sunday. This past Monday, they brought in what appears to be like a Cole Taylor lookalike. Cam Ball, redshirt senior tight end, 6'7", 250 pounds, from Mississippi State, previously Buffalo before that. Only played 139 snaps for the Bulldogs this past season. 110 of them were used for blocking. Only had 2 catches for 2 yards, and previously before that in 2024 was predominantly used on special teams, and then played his couple of years at Buffalo. So wasn't used a whole lot, and this is where I don't think West Virginia needed to go out there and go sign a reincarnation of Rob Gronkowski. I think to understand this tight end position is it's going to be Ryan Ward's to lose, I feel like, and Josh Sapp and Cam Ball are really going to compete with him. Very thin position after the transfer portal addition of Noah Bram. Colin McBee walked this past year, so he was not retained. So West Virginia was really down to Ryan Ward, Carter Zuliani, who redshirted and didn't play this past season, and 3 true freshmen. So you had to go out there, and I feel like kind of add around them to add competition to Ryan Ward and to add some depth to that room. So I think that's kind of a depth piece. Both of those guys, different body types. So Ball a little bit, bigger than Josh Sapp. So we'll just have to see how they practice through spring camp and what the news out of spring and then summer camp happened for that position group. But kind of liked where West Virginia added some depth there behind Ryan Ward. Then the news that happened today started it off with Jair Rollison, redshirt sophomore cornerback, 5'9", 180 pounds, from Kent State MAC school. Previously, before that, Pennsylvania high school powerhouse Bishop McDevitt, played played in 18 games over his first 2 seasons, a redshirt freshman year, and then starting all 12 games in 2025. Had 75 tackles, 7 pass breakups, 2.5 tackles for loss. Watching his tape just a little bit ago before I read this, I love his instincts. A guy who can play, I feel like, outside cornerback at 5'9", 180 pounds, but he'll hit you. He'll play really tough in coverage, and he's one who forces a lot of fumble. Like what I saw at the high school level, forced a whole lot of fumbles and was in and around the ball. So I think that is. Well, I'll talk about this in a little bit later, and we talk about the defensive side of the ball and within the overall scheme. But a lot of players for cornerbacks coach Rod West to play with in that room to find ultimately the best 2, maybe 3 guys that'll see the predominant snaps for this offense this year, maybe more. Then news out of the high school recruiting class. I know this is a transfer portal video, but I think in totality, let's still talk about roster management. So West Virginia received a commitment. I don't think he can sign until the late signing day in early February. But Brad Mosser, the state's player of the year, Randy Moss Award winner from Princeton, West Virginia, 5'11", 185 pounds, but kid's got speed to burn. He's got ball skills. Pretty much did everything for that Princeton team, catching the ball, running the ball, special teams. I love it. I love that he can be a Swiss Army knife, going to get the opportunity to play. Now, it didn't necessarily work out too well for the last, what was his running back's name for West Virginia in 2020? Was he a wide receiver? I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on this. Sorry, he transferred out a few years ago. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can find his name. It's like Judah Price. Now, it didn't really work out for Judah Price, who kind of popped off in the state championship playoffs a couple of seasons ago, and ultimately transferred transferred down to Marshall to try and compete. So I think that's the same kind of case for Brad Mosser. Get here, compete, get in the strength and conditioning room, prove that you belong. If you as a true freshman can prove that you belong as an in-state kid to compete at the Power 4, Big 12 level, then more power to you, and Mountaineer Nation will be completely behind you. So really excited that Coach Rodriguez and the staff found him a position on the field. If you go out, you ball out in-state, you show off like that, and you have what the staff deems as the skills, the attitude, and everything to play as a part of this program, happy to have you and will 100% support you. So love that addition of Brad Mosser. Then a couple of big ones, and these were guys that are both redshirt freshmen, so didn't really play a whole lot, but coming from two blue blood programs across the country. So first was Jacob Bradford, 5'11", 190-pound safety from LSU. In 2025, he just played 5 games, didn't record a stat, but looking at his recruiting profile out of high school, played for Catholic High School in Baton Rouge, so it was a right down the road, hometown team going to LSU. 3-star, top 500 player nationally, 26 safety, and 10th best player in the state of Louisiana, a 3-sport athlete. And like what I saw from him on field, it looks like he can also play outside corner or in the slot. So I'm curious to see what position he ultimately lands at. Looking at West Virginia's roster, I feel like a gaping hole there at one of the 3 safety positions. So I'm going to talk about that when I talk about kind of an overall big picture, looking at this transfer portal season and roster management operation. But I think Jacob Bradford has the inside slant, inside look at one of those potentially 3 starting safety positions, or we'll see a lot of snaps for this program this season. But West Virginia is going to be, I feel like, more multiple. I'll come back to that. The other one, I feel like this might be the biggest one of the day, Toby Hastrup. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. A redshirt freshman, defensive end, 6'4", 240 pounds. His teammates called him an absolute freak. Originally from London, England, but in 2024 played his high school ball at Maid Creek in Houston, Texas. He was a 4-star defensive end coming out of high school, the 12th best weak side defensive end nationally according to Rivals on 3, the 169th best player in the country, and 20th best player in the state of Texas. And I found this interesting. According to his profile page on Oregon's athletics website, ran a 10.93 100-meter dash at 235 pounds in high school. That's motoring. That's flying. And looking at his tape, wow, from high school, gets off the ball incredibly fast, just has really good speed. Is going to be, I feel like, because we didn't see a whole, heck of a lot from Wilnerson Telemack and Brandon Caesar, I feel like he might be the leader in the clubhouse in that room to nail down one of those defensive end positions. I talked about that, I think, on my last videos. That's what I was looking for out of this recruiting team, was that can you go out there and find another defensive end? Because looking at the way the position group was broken down, you got Darius Wiley, who's a JUCO transfer from, granted, I think JUCO national champion, Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. But then otherwise it was Telemack, who played 1 snap. Brandon Caesar didn't play another. Now West Virginia has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What I would qualify as interior defensive linemen, but West Virginia's only going to be really starting 2 of those guys. If one commands the nose guard position, one commands the defensive tackle position, kind of the way that Hammond Russell, Eddie Vesterinen nailed this down this past year, and you would think that would be the 2 returners in Corey McIntyre and Nate Gabriel. Who was going to be that guy on the end? Well, this Hastrup has all the makings of that kind of guy. Like I said, 6'4", 240, so maybe a little light for a true defensive end. But I mean, again, you're looking at Wiley, who's 250, Telemack 255, Brandon Caesar 265. Meanwhile, you think out of a 3-3-5, you'd want your defensive ends to be about 280. So I'm going to put a pin in that and come back. So that's why I would going back to what I said kind of in the intro is West Virginia it looked a little weird for West Virginia earlier this week when Jalen Thompson out of Michigan State, who previously visited, turned West Virginia down for Arizona State. Jamon Tapp, Southern Miss, went to Memphis. He visited. West Virginia did have a visitor from Division III defensive end Liam Danitz out of Hope College. But then, of course, the news pops off on Barstool Sports on Twitter that there's this freak of nature athlete at a D3 school that's getting offers from Division I schools, and he ultimately chooses Wisconsin. So I was very curious where West Virginia was going to go. They're on a couple of others. looking at it still. And I would love to have him. So Colin Reminowski, Division II, Ashland University, he visited yesterday, but I saw a little bit earlier ago on Twitter that he's still kind of advertising himself in the portal, so I don't know if the staff is necessarily going to like that. If you've already visited and you're still kind of trying to get yourself recruited, not really necessarily showing that you're all in on West Virginia. Now that could be just, posturing or the game that is this negotiation transfer portal season. But I'd like to have him 6'1", 260. Not a whole lot of carries there for Ashland University, but watching him just hit people from the fullback position just kind of reminds you of what West Virginia had in Owen Schmidt in the mid-2000s. So looking at this running back core also, it's a little bit, it's young or inexperienced, coming behind Cam Cook at Jacksonville State. You bring in from the JUCO ranks Martavius Boswell and Amari Latimer as a future star, but do you want another guy to kind of hold down that running back 2 ranks? West Virginia received a visit from Kanye Udo. I remember talking about him as a part of the Arizona State preview video. Came a transfer over from Army, kind of bigger back, I think 5'11", 220 pounds. So if West Virginia wanted to have a Cam Cook at 5'9", 205, and then a bigger back also to complement Latimer, who's at 230, Lawrence Autry at 215, you could go in the ranks of Reminowski and then maybe an Udo. I also really like Tyke Hayes. He entered the transfer portal on January 10th. It doesn't seem like West Virginia's received a visit, at least what On3 Rivals is reporting. But a guy from Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, former 4-star recruit, so right up the road, and love to build that pipeline back into Aliquippa to Morgantown like Drayvon Askew Henry back in the day, 12 years ago. So that's what I would say. Is it from looking on from here on out, who West Virginia could potentially add? I look at those couple of positions. If so, they maybe go running back 2 or a fullback. Otherwise, West Virginia is about done. So, not a whole lot to talk about with any other transfers out of West Virginia, I feel like, for this video. We kind of talked about that on a previous video. Christian Hamilton going to Marshall. I think that was one name. Wyatt Minor. I think he was just a guy who was, a local kid, in-state kid that you wanted to, give a potential at a roster position, but he transfers down to Division II, Glenville State. Glad he's found a home. Probably the most interesting, notable transfer out of the program that has yet to find a home is Nico Marial, unless I've missed it. Other than if West Virginia, and this is my theory, is I talked in my last video about resetting a player's eligibility clock, and I'm wondering if this back and forth with the West Virginia, I don't know if it was the medical staff or just administration as a whole, if they didn't fill out the paperwork, either in time or at all for Marial to get his eligibility clock reset for this year. So when he thinks he has 2 years worth of eligibility for a new potential school, he really has 1. And how many programs out there want their starter to be a guy who only has 1 year's worth of eligibility? And Marial has never been really a true full-time starter. So if he would have played all season, and here's the other thing. So Max Brown's still currently on the roster, at least according to WVUsports.com as of today. So it doesn't look like Max Brown transferred. I talked about that after the Texas Tech game. Is Max Brown kind of done with the journey that he had from Florida to Charlotte to now ultimately West Virginia? So I would have loved to still have Marial in the building with over a Max Brown, at least, if we're talking about, Marial versus Scotty Fox versus Michael Hawkins. But I think that ship sailed. I hope the best for Nico. But I thought, whenever he didn't get a commitment right out of the onset from somewhere, so he hadn't really been, or maybe he had, and maybe there just wasn't interest reciprocated by anyone in FBS. to bring him in as a starter. So you would have thought that would have happened initially when the transfer portal opened 2 weeks ago. No, that didn't happen. And then North Texas, Neil Brown's new school, choosing Taven Jackson from UCF, I went, uh-oh. And then things have gone quiet and quieter. I hope that the best for Nico Marial in finding out the right landing spot. But right now, until to be determined where he ends up. But might have played the wrong card of wanting to, and in the manner in which he did, to now leave, and now where are you going to end up instead of staying at West Virginia? So let's walk it back and let's talk. So I've now talked about all of the new additions for the team as of today. So again, 42 players have entered the transfer portal with eligibility for next year. More who I don't believe have eligibility, that being guys like Hammond Russell, William Davis, who chose Sam Houston State, Russell to Wisconsin, Ty Edwards posting that he's entering the transfer portal. 9 guys who have either retired, that one being Scott Keene, who walked on senior day, same with Colin McBee, same with Michael Clay, or who were just not retained. And I talked about them earlier this week on the roster, that they've kind of just disappeared online. So that being like guys like Camden Pitchford, Gabe Ryan, Julian Horton, BJ Hendrickson, RJ Koken, Aiden Steyer, and Troy Fisher. So with now 29 transfer portal additions, 48 high school JUCO signees, and I had 48 because Chase Ridley asked for his release from his NLI and has gone to Arizona. And then also last night, bandit outside linebacker Camden Gillespie asked for his release from his NLI. And now adding Brad Mosser, West Virginia's at 111 players by my count. So they have some flexibility. I feel as if there's about 10 guys that West Virginia could potentially, and I mean, this is ugly and doesn't look good, could look to just, I don't know if you can do this, cut without there being a transfer portal window necessarily for the spring, summer. But West Virginia, I feel like, still has a little bit of wiggle room with the roster to go and add, but I really do think it's about done at this point in time. So what I would say is, I think from this staff's goals, and so what fans think and what the staff thinks, I think 4 points. I think number one is their goal is never again, as Rich Rodriguez famously pointed out in the post-game press conference against Arizona State, lose by this much. That pissed him off to no end. He was patient all up the way to that point in time, and I think that just set him over the edge. So improving the offensive line was goal number one. And West Virginia went out there, and they definitely did that. I feel like in their signings of Wes King, Cameron Griffin, Devin Vass, Carson Cassidy, Bubba Grayson, and then bringing in a highly rated 4-star/5-star recruit in Kevin Brown, and then also really high, some 3-star recruits in Jonas Moya, Rhett Morris, Camden Goforth. So I don't know much about LaMarcus Dillard. Aiden Woods, I think, is a bit of a undersized at 6'6", 255, but that's fine. He's got 4 years worth of eligibility to go out there and prove himself alongside. So with what West Virginia retained, I feel like your 2 biggest pieces in Landon Livingston and Nick Cray, with some guys who did have some snaps in 2025 in Malik Agbo and Josh Isosa, West Virginia's off. They have enough pieces, enough high-quality pieces, I feel like, to put together an offensive line. And with having a better offensive line, you are going to move people. And if there's anything that I have learned, I feel like, from this season, in all of my years of watching college football, is that if you have an offensive line that is like not good enough to move Ohio, let me put it this way, it doesn't matter at every single other position. Doesn't matter at quarterback, doesn't matter at running back, wide receivers, your defense. You have to have a competent to to above average offensive line if you want to win games at the Big 12 level. If you want to win at the SEC level, even the ACC level, and anywhere else in the Power 4, you have to have a good offensive line. So I feel like that offensive line is a ragtag group that is going to grow together, I feel like, through this spring and summer, and I like it so much better than where West Virginia was at a year ago. So with some returnees, with some high-quality transfer portal additions, and then some hungry, I feel like, high-quality true freshmen. I would also say recycle, but also upgrade some players that were lost or cut to the transfer portal with new players of comparable or higher level talent. Now, I was leaning a little more toward just what West Virginia recycled, and then they added the players that they added today. So from that perspective, I'm really excited. I think this parlays, though, into my third point is that West Virginia, though, wanted to get younger. This time last year, West Virginia brought in 31 one-year transfer portal players. This year, they've only brought in 14. They've brought in guys with multiple years of eligibility, like I said, building from the ground up, in the hopes, I feel like, that for 2027, West Virginia can retain 66% or more of this roster, and that is where you see, I feel like, stability for the room for West Virginia to grow into one of the top 25 programs in the country again. That West Virginia, for the last, oh my gosh, it feels like so many years, has not had good enough players to compete at this level. Not enough of them, at least. Some here and there, but not enough in totality to be able to compete, to contend for a Big 12 championship and do anything that's going to excite the fan base. They kind of got lucky with the way the schedule broke in 2023, as we said, had some last-minute wins that proved pivotal for the season at Texas Tech and home against Texas Tech and at TCU, and then they were able to turn that into a 9-win Duke's Mayo Bowl winning season. But for so long, West Virginia didn't have good enough players, and that is ultimately, at the end of the day, and I feel like I've said this 100 times across my channel in the last year, do you ultimately trust in this administration, the Rich Rodriguez administration, to identify, evaluate, develop, and develop talent better than the previous Neil Brown administration? From an identifying standpoint, I feel like checking the box. From an identify / evaluate, I would also just add into their fundraising. That is something that I was always critical of, that I think that Neil Brown lost the faith, lost the trust, lost the credibility from the people who write the big checks, and enough of the fan base that would jump and on board and galvanize Country Roads trust to the point of where West Virginia is now. Now, I know things have kind of changed with the House settlement and being able to revenue share and being this far deep into the Ren Baker regime, and West Virginia being able to fundraise, find the money, and make it work to be able to invest in this roster. But you never saw the kind of Power 4 level transfers into this program that you saw under Neil Brown. Just wasn't possible, or just wasn't done. And then so much of a focus, I felt like, on retention from 2023 to 24, and when West Virginia still retained so much of its talent, didn't add enough in the transfer portal in that 24 season, and you saw what ultimately happened, combined with some coaching failures. I don't really want to write any more of the, epitaph of Neil Brown, but just look at the difference. Look at the difference in totality now of this roster, what West Virginia has imported. I'm really, really impressed. But especially, again, to get young, that you're not going to have so many just one-year guys walk at the end of the 2026 season, but it's ultimately going to fall, I feel like, on this program. And again, still constant fundraising. And the biggest question ultimately I feel like it has, or beyond all the culture conversation that I've heard this week, and does Hard Edge still, play, and the disgruntled feelings of Jaheim White and Josiah Trotter, the bigger question I have is West Virginia hasn't had the kind of NFL talent, I would say widespread NFL talent, because, of course, West Virginia sent some guys to the pros, Dante Stills, Zach Frazier, Wyatt Milam, but will there be some game changers out there? Tavon Austin, David Sills, Will Greer, Geno Smith, that West Virginia will be able to retain if the rules are the way they are now, which is non-existent, and we don't have any sort of seismic change in college football. That's ultimately what and I've read the article from Ross Dellinger, highly encourage anyone out there listening to this video to go read that article from Ross Dellinger, and how close the SEC is potentially from breaking away what they wanted to do in 2020 when COVID happened, and now they are so disgruntled with tampering, the non-existent College Sports Commission, and many other factors that they want to try and break away. And ultimately what that then does for the future of college football. It's just in its most fragile state I feel like it's ever been. But that's what I mean to say is that's what I'm keeping my eye on moving forward, is can West Virginia continue to recruit at a high level from a high school perspective, and then also go in maybe fewer, because again, 29 transfer portal additions was not the 12 to 15 that Coach Rodriguez said multiple times during the season and then into the early portions of the offseason. There was more than that. So that's what I'm really wanting to see, because that's when you can compete with the big boys. That's when you're really, truly back up into the top 25 nationally, I feel like. So back to the goals for this team. So improving the offensive line, improve the players that were lost or exported to the transfer portal, get younger, and then I feel like getting a mobile quarterback. So Michael Hawkins in that regard. I still really like Scotty Fox. I think from a passing standpoint, to throw for 300 yards the first time ever that a true freshman has done so in 130 years of this football program was saying something. Going on the road and beating Houston was saying something. So I would love a guy who's done nothing but all the right things since he's been here, said the right things, competed his ass off, and now has stayed for a year. Wish nothing but the best for him. But does Michael Hawkins, alongside with his rushing ability, and Cam Cook right alongside him, intrigue you with this Rich Rodriguez offensive system, and this built offensive line more so than Scotty Fox? I'm starting to kind of lean that way. I'm starting to kind of feel that. Now, I don't know enough about Hawkins. I've liked what I've seen a little bit on tape from here and there from 2 years ago at Oklahoma, but ultimately he wasn't so good that Oklahoma felt as if they, didn't need to break the bank to go get a John Mateer and, supersede Michael Hawkins and his development now that he's here. But does it give me kind of, I feel like 2005 vibes with a Adam Bednarik and a Scotty Fox and a Pat White and a Michael Hawkins? I'm not trying to compare Hawkins to the great one, and ultimately it was kind of a Wally Pipp situation for Adam Bednarik, but that's kind of what I feel like a little bit is the past is repeating itself here, and we'll just have to see. Ultimately, does Scotty Fox improve so much as a field general, as a passer, that he is the unsung, clear-cut number one starting quarterback? Or do we have a little bit of competition that goes into the first few weeks of the season like last year? And then, again, Hawkins' rushing ability just adds so much that you can't pass him up. So on paper, 15th best transfer portal class in the nation to go along with the 21st best freshman and JUCO recruiting class in the nation. I would say I talked enough about the quarterback run game, talked about the offensive line. I do like this move that West Virginia made from a coaching standpoint, bringing in Larry Knight. He is now the Edge's pass rush specialist. Also news coming down yesterday that Coach Jeff Castile, former defensive coordinator, last year's Bandits outside linebackers coach, is retiring. Whether he will go down to, I think it is Glenville State or somewhere else to coach with his son, Jake Castile, who was an assistant for the program and then left this offseason as well to, for a step up. That's great for him. So just, I don't know, where Coach Castile's head is at, but bring in Larry Knight and let's see what this I feel like front seven ultimately becomes, because I feel like I've talked enough about the defensive line already. Adding in David Afogo, Harper Holloman, Jeremiah Johnson, I still feel as if Toby Hastrup, where is he going to fit? Is he going to be that true bandit edge rusher, and then West Virginia finds another defensive end piece? Or, can he play defensive end and one of those guys I just mentioned step up and ultimately take that over? So from that standpoint, it looks as if in the interior linebackers in West Virginia, it's played about four consistently, it felt like last year. I was looking at the snap counts earlier today from the Arizona State game, trying to see, because I was theorizing that West Virginia would go closer to a 3-4 for this upcoming season, and that might still be the case, that West Virginia will switch between having just 4 safeties on the field and then having, 3 or 4 safeties, 4 linebackers, 3 down linemen. Because I don't know if West Virginia ever will truly get away from a 3-man defensive line front to my ultimate goal is getting to a 4-man front. But West Virginia tries to masquerade that, I feel like, in 2 heavier interior defensive linemen, kind of a lighter, strong side defensive end. And is that a guy like a Hastrup at 240 who can do that? Or like I said, Telemac or Caesar, who are at 255 and 265 respectively, to play that end position, and then Hastrup comes off the other side. I would say at the cornerback's position, it is open tryouts now. So if Gamir Latimer is your true number 1 starter, I feel like there are a lot of hungry underclassmen, and say newly added Malik Hawkins from Oklahoma, Jair Rollison, who just committed today, Andrew Paldrell and Chams Diagni, who committed from UNLV and Georgia State at the G6 level, and then a couple of twin school Hutchinson Community College, Damon Allen and Rayshawn Reynolds Jr. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different cornerbacks that West Virginia is ultimately going to try to field 3 or 4 of them. So, open tryouts for those guys. May the best men win. And then I think with the addition now of Jacob Bradford today from LSU, I feel a little bit better about this safety position. So if Kamari Wilson, who really liked his speed, closing on the ball ability, big hitter from Memphis, if he locks down that nickel safety position, or who knows, Jacob Bradford might hold down that position from LSU. If one of those guys gets or 2 of those guys get the starting position alongside Nick Taylor, I like now that West Virginia, I feel a little bit better about their ones at the safety. And then Damari Williams, Matt Sieg, Vincent Smith, guys who are newcomers to this program and still young in their development. If they back those guys up, prove themselves, and they're able to work into the rotations. So I feel a whole lot better about this defense after today. As about 5-6 o'clock today, Friday. Than I did as of just yesterday with those additions in Bradford and bringing in Rollison and also Hastrup. So those were 3 much-needed additions, I feel like. So what West Virginia is going to do in 2026 with a better offensive line, you sustain longer drives, you score more points. You hope that improves the complementary football aspect from 2025. And I think that West Virginia did enough defensively, especially now because of these additions here on Friday, that I don't think that this is going to be any sort of a major step back for this defense. West Virginia had a good defense in 2025 that was left out on the field way too long, burned out, And ultimately, the dam just broke on them against some bigger, heavier opponents. Now, West Virginia is going to be very young. That's what really is one of the themes I hope that I can talk about more in the spring, over the summer, and then maybe if I get invited on some guest shows, we can kind of debate this over the summer. I hope that West Virginia has some studs out of this freshman group that are going to wow some people. And whether it's on special teams or just a big play here and there, I just really hope that that's what you hope, that you hope maybe out of this freshman class, maybe half of it will retain for next year. Some of the guys who are the transfer portal additions with multiple years, again, if they can get on the field and start, hopefully they're pushed also alongside this up-and-coming, hungry, true freshman class. This team has a lot of, I feel like, 2005 all written over it. A ragtag kind of group out there that is going to wow and really surprise some people, that the world's going to count them out on the outside looking in. I've been looking at their schedule for 2026, and I like the way it sets up. I mean, Coastal Carolina at home, season opener. They're starting over with a new head coach, brand new team. UT Martin, week 2. I thought it was somebody else, forgive me, on my previous videos. So FCS team, be able to work out the kinks. And then a neutral site game, so not a true road game, in Charlotte, North Carolina against Virginia. Now, Virginia is kind of intriguing if you've looked at their transfer portal recruiting, because they brought in Bo Prabula, former Penn State quarterback, played this past season at Missouri, didn't have a great year for the Tigers, so he hits the portal and now comes down to the ACC. And then our good old friend Eli Holstein from Pitt is also going to compete from the starting position. So we might get a West Virginia Eli Holstein round 2, but this time instead of playing for Pitt, he's playing for Virginia. So that'll be a nice border war rivalry non-conference game. And then looking at West Virginia's conference schedule in 2026, let me bring it up real quick just because I don't have it. And then again, we don't have the order, we don't have the times, we don't have the true dates. But at Iowa State, that's a program in complete rebuild. TCU lost its starting quarterback in Josh Hoover. I don't like the matchups initially. In the road at Utah with Devin Dampier returning. Texas Tech having the number 1 recruiting class in the nation, or in the transfer portal class, and having to play them in Lubbock. But then Arizona, Houston, who West Virginia beat a year ago, even though they won 10 games. Oklahoma State, I know, is firing on all cylinders in the transfer portal, but they're coming also to Morgantown. A Kansas team that's, a remakeover and bringing back Andy Kotelnickel at offensive coordinator. They'll always do good battles with the Jayhawks. In Cincinnati, who West Virginia has had a very positive record against. I think, have only lost once or twice to the Bearcats in the, almost 10 times that they've played them in history. So, and they just lost Brendan Sorsby at quarterback. So it's just like, I feel, and I mean, again, I felt kind of this way, so it might just be me drinking the Kool-Aid, or the fact that I follow West Virginia, love West Virginia, want them to do well, but I feel much better about their chances for 2026 than I did at the beginning. I feel like this checked a lot of boxes for me, and I'm one of the ones who are more skeptical, always very highly analytical and logical. I hope that's one of the reasons that you like watching my videos if you're watching this. So I think West Virginia's added a whole lot of pieces, but there's still a lot to figure out. So I'm just hoping that they have kind of almost like a Remember the Titans kind of, coming together, and that's going to take time, all spring, then, summer workouts, camp, all of that. It's going to ultimately come together, but I just like that now. I like where the coaching staff is at, a year further along in their development, bringing in Larry Knight, and then were there any offensive changes? No, I don't. An offensive lineman, offensive line coach Rick Trickett is gonna just freaking set the tone. Like I said, the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, I feel like. So I think you've invested in 2 really good coaches. I think you've brought in, a director of player evaluation. You've hit it out of the park with your high school recruiting. You've hit it out of the park with your transfer portal recruiting, better than you've had, I feel like, a recruiting standpoint in years, maybe ever. So I can't help but anything but feel great right now as a West Virginia fan, at least from the perspective, games still have to be played. There's still a lot of work to be done. West Virginia has never won a Big 12 championship, but I think they just have to get better. 1% better each day is a bit of a cliche, but right now they're a whole bunch of really, really good pieces, ingredients, and I hope they can come together to make the whole pie. So how are you feeling about this team? Are you juiced? Are you motivated, Mountaineer Nation? I feel like you can't win the season, in the off season, but you can certainly lose it, and I don't feel that way at all. I feel like they've done nothing but hit a bunch of singles, doubles, triples, and even a home run here and there. So I'm liking where the future of this program goes from here on out. And I can't thank Coach Rodriguez enough for all of his hard work since the first day that he came in. He has hit the ground running. I feel as if he's, 20 years younger since being here, and he and his staff have just worked their tails off, worked their fingers to the bone, their eyes to the bone. I can just imagine how much freaking film they've done, how many conversations with players, families, agents, dealing with a whole lot of headaches. So I hope maybe next week that he, General Manager Chuck Lilly, now new Director of Player Evaluation, Chance Trickett, I hope maybe even Zach Alley, I hope that maybe even Ren Breaker, bring all of them freaking out, I feel like, into a press conference and let them kind of explain some of these things that I talked about, because I love what they've done in trying to a whole makeover to this roster. They've taken a sickle to it, and now they're just building it from the ground up. So please like this video if you've liked it. Love to have you a subscriber to my channel. I think this will give us some pause, I feel like, as of now, on West Virginia football. I say that, and then, some giant news will break or idea that I have or something like that. But we are in the thick of basketball season, and that, very interesting with this basketball team right now. But for football right now, I'm feeling really good. I can't wait till we get a final schedule, talking about spring ball and the annual blue gold game. Hoping I don't have a work event that weekend so that I can go to the game for the first time in what feels like years. So love to know your thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent, Mountaineer Nation. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. I'll be back next week. Let's go, spot the ball, and hail West Virginia.